Gym Crashers. We're here at Fight Science in Los Angeles with Ian Harris, head instructor. How's everything going today, Ian?
It is going well.
I love it, man. We had some good rolls.
Put us through the ringer.
A little sweaty.
Yeah. Put us both through
just
the ringer.
a little bit.
But a pleasure to be here. And we met a little while back, and we were talking fights. And it looks like you were the matchmaker for a previous fight. I got a little bit of that info, and I was struck by some information that you gave me about body type. And that probably concluded to the talk about being here today, and it's called Fight Science for a reason.
That's true. Yes. Well, I created the name. Funny. I created the name Fight Science about 15 years ago when they didn't have a name mixed martial arts. They didn't have MMA. It wasn't even a thing. It was the UFC was still style versus style, and your jiu-jitsu, you were wrestling, you whatever. And so instead of calling it a martial art, I'm a science geek. I'm kind of a nerd, and I thought, what's more of the science of fighting than it is a martial art? It's all this different stuff put together. And then, not long after that, they came up with the name MMA Mixed Martial Arts. So I started calling it Fight Science MMA. But originally, that was it wasn't meant to be the name. It was meant to be the style. Like instead of karate or whatever, it was Fight Science was the style because MMA didn't exist.
Sure. Taking what was good from each of them, kind of whittling it down.
Yeah, and then
what
just
eventually happened
to make the full fight. How do you make a full fighter? What's the science of making a full fighter?
Sure. No, I can actually see that. And in taking your class, I noticed that there's positional changes. There's things that you set up in a different way that make perfect sense for things to fall into place. For instance, the triangle, we're on our back, and we weren't just going to shoot for the triangle, the traditional shove the arm through, throw the leg over. You set it up, you had us reverse it, made it to where a person had to plant their hand, reverse it one more time, and then you sunk it in deep. So first time to see that, so I can see the science at work.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of my thing, is like trying to find stuff that exists somewhere else maybe, or that works, and then why does it, what makes it different? I remember years ago, a lot of the stuff, my guard's my game, and I remember back in the day, you used to grab your foot to do a triangle. You'd put your triangle and you'd lock it like this, and I started grabbing my ankle and doing it this way, and I remember being told, that's not how you do it, that's not how you do it. And now everybody does it that way. But for years, it was, you gotta grab the toes and you do it like this, and I thought, well, it's easier to lock it in. I don't have to let go of the toes to do it, And then the reverse triangle came the same way, where I couldn't finish big guys. So I'd reverse the triangle and keep them from posturing for a little bit, and then I'd go back to the regular triangle once I got my angle, and I didn't have to worry about losing the position while I was trying to find the angle. And a lot of it just comes from MMA. In MMA, sometimes it's not about finishing the submission. Sometimes it's about getting to a position where you can hold him and elbow him in the face. So my jiu-jitsu became MMA jiu-jitsu, and then it's like when I started doing jiu-jitsu again with gi, how do I apply that in reverse now?
Yeah, that's a whole other game entirely. In reading about you, it's a pretty long story. I see even that you were underneath Bustillos for a while, so a Bruce Lee Jeet Kune Do practitioner that was able to teach you some skills. And they're very adaptative, kind of what MMA or Fight Science might be as well. So does some of your philosophy stem from the Jeet Kune Do?
I think all of it does. I always say that I think Bruce Lee was the first mixed martial artist. Maybe not the first, but the first famous mixed martial artist. The one, if he was around now, or if he didn't die, there would have been MMA. What he does now, what he did then would have been MMA. He started grappling. I guess after a couple of run-ins or workouts or whatever with Judo Gina Bell, I guess he got choked out and he started learning grappling, started learning some catch wrestling or whatever. And I think people misunderstand Jeet Kune Do. I think people misunderstand Jeet Kune Do as throw out. They always say find what's useful and throw out the rest. And it's like, that doesn't mean don't learn it though. So for me, it's like you learn everything, and then you adapt a style that works best for your body type, works best for what you already like. In fighting, how many times have we seen somebody hit pads, and you watch this person like, well, this person is amazing. They're hitting pads and just missing everything and hitting perfectly and perfect form, and nothing hits them, and their focus is good, and then the fight comes and it's a brawl. What happened to that?
We saw Ronda do it, right?
Yeah. Even people like some of the old shoot the box guys like Vonderlei, when he fought, he brawled. When you watch him, technically he knows what he. But because people go back to what they're used to, and how you train is going to translate. to a certain way. So if you're used to brawling and training, then you're going to brawl in the fight. Even if you hit pads and do all these drills, if you don't find a way to transition that in the fight, in training, to where there's a halfway point from training to fighting, there's a middle point where you're not under the anxiety of getting punched in the face and getting elbowed, but you're also not completely anxiety free where you're just hitting pads. You have to be somewhere in between and transition that so you can learn to take chances. You don't want to take chances getting hit in the head by someone like Dondo Silva. So how do you practice this new move you have at a relatively decent speed with somebody going at you? It's either full bore or not. So the point is that there's a lot of things that people need to learn, and they go, no, that doesn't work for me. Well, it might work for you. You don't know. Give it a try, build it up, see what works, and then fine tune it so that it works for your body or works for your mentality or works for whatever. So for me, when I was young, I started boxing when I was 6. And then, I wrestled a little bit, wrestled a couple years, I wasn't very good. And I started doing traditional martial arts, Kempo, Wing Chun, Japanese, Wally J, small circle jiu-jitsu stuff. And my instructor was like this Kempo guy who we trained in our regular street clothes in a parking lot. If we did throws on the parking lot, and his whole thing was, he was all about Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee, this kind of thing, and he mixed his Kempo and his Wing Chun and all this kind of stuff. So I had this whole philosophy well before I ever went to JKD, well before I ever went to IMB Academy was hey, first I was a Bruce Lee fanatic, but also I had this instructor who did these other traditional martial arts and said, most of this is garbage. Like he'd say, back then it was, you're never gonna throw a head kick. Kick him in the knee, poke him in the eye, whatever you gotta do, get out of there. It wasn't like, you're gonna throw these spinning kicks. He was like, that's ridiculous. Now we know that you can actually throw those things, but back then it was like, that's not an efficient move. Quickest weapon to the closest target, right? And he was teaching me that stuff under Kempo Wing Chun before I even had ever started doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I like to think that some of those traditional martial art instructors understood that there were street fights.
Yeah.
And you couldn't expose your students to leaving the dojo and then not understanding that you need to be quick, you need to be mobile, right? No fixed positions, keep moving.
Well, the funny thing, it really is funny to me how progressive he was, and at the same time how ignorant we were to the ground. Because when I was a kid, nobody considered wrestling a martial art.
Not a dominant.
It's funny because I had actually just said that the other day. I'm like, out of all things, I'm kind of weird how wrestling was never considered a form of martial arts.
No.
But it's still a form of
combat,
yeah. Grappling.
But you could be in high school and somebody could be the champion wrestler, and they'd be like, don't mess with that guy, he knows karate. And you're like, little did they know that you would take that guy down and smash him. And even the wrestler dudes would be like, I ain't touching that guy, he knows karate. But the thing is that I remember my instructor used to always say, he would quote the statistic, and he wasn't wrong, he was absolutely right. But he would say almost every single class, I worked with this guy, I lived with a guy, he was my dad's friend, and he rented a room from us, my karate instructor. So I trained with him since the time I was like 12 to the time I was 21. And he was like, he would say every day, 90% of all fights end up on the ground. 90% of all fights end up on the ground. And we just knew that. That was a fact in Kempo. 90% of all fights end up on the ground. And, usually that meant you stomp them on the head. Go to the ground, stomp them in the face. But it's funny because we never learned a single piece of ground fighting.
Sure.
And nobody did back then. And that wasn't like a totally uncommon thing. He wasn't some, genius, but he definitely taught us 90% of all fights end up on the ground. And yet, it never occurred to any of us to go, hey, shouldn't we learn something on the ground?
Yeah.
We always thought, okay, so that means don't be there. Okay, that means kick him in the head and run away. But it never was like, what happens if we get there and we can't get up?
What if I'm the one on the ground?
Yeah.
My back on the ground.
Yeah, it never occurred to us.
Yeah.
And then when I moved,
I was one of those kids. I know.
Yeah, same thing. And then I moved down to I was in Northern California. I moved down to Los Angeles and started training at IMB Academy. And we had this is Yuri Nakamura, the Shuto guy. And then once a week there was a guy that would do there was one of the Gracie Brown belt or something like that, because we were near the Torrance Academy.
Okay. Is that in a Santos school? Is that where you were at, or Bustillos?
Bustillos. That was the IMB Academy off Vermont, the old one. And I trained over at Inosantos sometimes too, because they were kind of I don't know if they had a falling out or not, but at one point they were kind of they were obviously friendly. I think IMB used to be Insanto Martinez Bustillo, and then they changed it to
when you said initials,
International Martial Arts and Boxing.
Yes.
Because Bustillo was the Hawaiian heavyweight boxing champion.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of boxing, a lot of Muay Thai, which, you know, kind of upset me when I first got there because I'm like, I want to learn Jeet Kune Do. And here I am learning Kali, I'm learning Muay Thai, I'm learning boxing, but I got a lot of, you know, I probably wouldn't have gotten into Muay Thai had I not been there because, you know, at one point he was like the U.S. Muay Thai coach or something to that effect.
It's pretty good luck to fall upon that. You know,
yeah,
that time,
it was great, and you know, we had some really great guys. I mean, guys I'm still friends with, Ed Wedding, phenomenal. Ed's the same age as me, same background. I think he's got the same started jiu-jitsu the same time. And Ed was when I got there, he was already the guy. Like, he was already fighting Muay Thai. He had a great Muay Thai record. I think he went 18-1. I think his only loss was to Rob McCullough, and he's a little guy. He's like a 135er, and McCullough's a big guy. So Ed was really good, man. And so it was kind of cool. I look back at those old pictures and I see people that I recognize. Oh, that's that guy from the movies, and that's from 25 years ago.
Yeah,
you
sure.
know?
Yeah, you've been in it a while, being here in LA.
Yeah. So it was cool. It was like you know, I learned JKD, and that's why I got introduced to jiu-jitsu. And then the UFC happened while I was at IMB Academy.
Yeah.
And
how long had you been at IMB by the time UFC came out in '93?
a year and a half. So I started there in '92 and I left there in '96. So I was there for 4 years.
Yeah, so you moved down here from NorCal, yeah.
And I moved back to NorCal.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I moved back to Santa Cruz and I started jiu-jitsu in '96 with Claudio Franca.
I was going to say, who's up there? So
yeah. He'd been there forever. He was one of the first guys that was there. He started, we had our tournament was the US Open.
Okay.
It was like put on by our school. So I was at Claudio's for almost 5 years. So about 2000, end of 2000, and I moved back down here again. Yeah, and then I started, so I've been training stuff for a while. I kept training myself and then started coaching guys. Funny enough, I started teaching. You know, I'm a comedian and I was editing commercials and stuff, and I was getting fat and out of shape, and I was going to Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu every now and then, but not enough to make it to where I felt like I was good. So I started teaching a class. Like, I'm going to start teaching my little hybrid Kempo, Wing Chun, Muay Thai, grappling, catch as catch can, wrestling, kind of all the stuff that I'd done merged together. I didn't have a name for it, so I'm going to start teaching this, and that's when I started teaching in like 2002. And that's why I started calling it Fight Science. And meanwhile, I was still doing jiu-jitsu.
Still developing.
Yeah, and then we ended up having, you know, my partner at this gym. One of my partners, Julian, was one of our first fighters. Julian and Chad George, who has his own gym now.
Yeah.
Chad and Julian were and a guy named George James, who doesn't fight anymore. Those were our first three fighters, and we had to fight in Tijuana because it wasn't legal in California.
I heard about those stories back in the day as well. Yeah.
We have to go to two. I remember Chad George. He was his first fight. They called me Eric Del Fiero, who owns Alliance. He ran Total Combat, and he called me, and George was fighting. And 4 days before, he said, "Hey, you have a 145? I got this kid. He knows nothing. He's just a wrestler, and he's got 6 months of training." And I go, "Well, I got a kid who's about 145. He was a wrestler, and he's only got 2 months of training." I'm like, "Chad, you want to fight in Mexico?" He goes, "I guess." "Well, wait." I go, 145. He's like, "All right, I guess so. We got 3 days to make it." You know, and he wasn't in any kind of shape at all. He wasn't doing it.
Now he's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh, geez,
You know?
dude's a monster.
You're a monster, right?
So he took that fight. We drove down to Mexico, and he kept trying to throw these push kicks, and the guy kept picking him up and throwing him, and then he was kind of getting his butt kicked, and then he knew one move, which was flip the guy over and get a mounted guillotine. And he ended up finishing the guy in the 3rd round. They were like identical matchups. They were like, both had wrestling backgrounds, like high school and the little college wrestling, and both had, you know, a few months of other training. And afterward, I remember Eric gave an envelope to Chad with like $200 in it or something like that. Chad's like, "What's this?" He goes, "Money." He's like,
You're a professional.
I get paid.
"You gave me money." "You gave me money." I'm like, "Yeah."
I like that.
I was like, "Whoa."
Really cool.
I was expecting money. That's pretty funny. The reason that traditional martial arts don't work, and I'm not saying they don't work, okay? They do work. The reason that they don't work is because we don't train them the way we train jiu-jitsu, wrestling, or boxing. When we train boxing, we put on boxing gloves and we punch each other in the face. You either get better or you get hurt or you don't do it anymore. Jiu-jitsu, we roll 100% you get to a position, you tap and you quit. In the street, there's no tapping, you get choked out, you get your arm broken. You can't practice, let me try to shoot you with this gun and you poke my eye out at any real speed. Because you'd either get shot or you have a one-up, you lose an eye. Right, and you can't practice that. So those things also don't control the anxiety. In jiu-jitsu, you're rolling with people who are trying to choke you out. So you learn quickly how to control your anxiety, at least on some level. So if you're in a situation and somebody comes up to you at the ATM and you're used to someone going like this, yeah, you're going, yeah, 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 boom, and the person falls over, and somebody comes up and goes, give me your money. But if somebody comes up and grabs you, and you for 5 years, when someone grabs you, you flip them over in your armbar, you do that. So not only is it a practical application, you're learning to control your anxiety in a real situation, and that's something that you don't do unless you do it at a full speed. And that's the problem with traditional martial arts. Not that they don't work, not that the techniques don't work, because they do. You just gotta find a way to practice them. Or at least have them in the back of your head and learn something else. That's why Lyoto Machida and these guys, people started, oh wow, you can learn karate. Well yeah, if you know jiu-jitsu and wrestling and boxing, then you can throw a karate kick. If all you know is karate, well, good luck for your 30 seconds in the UFC.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah, he has a big wide open stance. He's hitting out kind of like a fencer.
Right.
You know. Which
is great because he's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, he knows how to wrestle, he boxes, so he can keep it in the karate range.
Sure.
If all he knew was karate, he'd be taking down somebody in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Well, now even at that, now you see more guys with that wide stance, like McGregor, something like that. Who, again, he knows how to box. You don't see him grappling too much, but I mean, I'm sure that
he's a multiple stripe brown belt, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. I know he's a brown belt.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I mean,
he knows how to roll. He knows, like you said, how to wrestle and everything, in between, whatever.
Yeah. And that's where I think MMA is going now. Is we had the point where it was jiu-jitsu, and then it was the striker who knew how to get off the ground. Then it was the wrestler, really. Then it was the wrestler to not get submitted. Then it was the guy who could not get wrestled but could strike and chop with L's. Then it became the mixed martial arts that could do everything. Then it became the athlete, the guy who knew a little bit of everything but was just so athletic. Now we're gonna get to a point where we've got the guy or girl who is really good everywhere and really athletic, but really strong specialty in one area. The Damian Maias, although his last fight, he's getting a little older, but his last fight wasn't great, but has been able to get to a position where he can always get it in his jiu-jitsu realm. Or some of the Conor McGregors who've been able to keep it where they want it. Be able to fight off anything else and be able to excel. Doesn't go to the ground. Cowboy Cerrone, all these fights by submission. But when he wants to keep it on the feet, he keeps it on the feet, and he has a specialty. And I think that that's what we're getting, people that are well-rounded and good everywhere, but they really excel at one thing. And it's a matter of who can make the fight their fight, and who can not fight the other person's fight. And once I get you into my fight, I'm gonna corral you into my thing. Those are the guys we see winning now. These people that are just amazing everywhere, but they're really good at something.
Sure.
Yeah, no,
I like that thought process too.
Yeah.
It's important to bring people to your game.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
I'm not gonna fall into your trap.
No.
Right?
No, and that's the trap of studying tape. Some people don't study tape at all. Some people let their coaches study tape. Some people only study tape. For me, I let the fighter decide if they want to watch their, some people they freak out if they watch their opponents, right? But I've fallen in the trap too of looking at a person saying, he does this always, training that, and then the guy comes out and doesn't do it. And now you're waiting for it. So what you end up doing is playing his game. You're not playing your game because you're waiting for him to play his game, and he never plays his game and he wins. And that's happened to us a couple times. And the trick, I think, is to watch the tape, be aware of what they do, know that they might change. You have to be ready to adapt when they change, if they've changed. And be aware of those things, because okay, this guy does this 90% of the time, chances are good he's going to do it, and let's drill it. But let's not sit and wait for the guy to do that. Let's implement our game and be aware of that. And if he doesn't do it, great. If he does it, we're ready for it. And you hear that all the time, like somebody gets taken down a few times, and people go, oh, you better go get your wrestling. Oh, really? I just fought Chad Mendes. You think 8 weeks of wrestling, of working like collegiate wrestling is going to do me any good against a guy like Chad Mendes? No, probably not. Now that doesn't mean I ignore wrestling, but that means I find ways to get up after he takes me down. I find ways to land strikes on the way in. I work on other reversals and other things that are useful in MMA that are counter wrestling. But if I sit there and practice fighting for underhooks, I'm just going to get used to fighting for underhooks. Yeah. So my game's going to be like, oh yeah, and guess who's going to win the underhook game? Not me. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Make him not want to shoot. Make him not want to wrestle.
Yeah, and if he does, get up. Like, you know, or do something else, whatever. Use your jiu-jitsu. Do other things. But
stay offensive is what I say.
You know,
don't be on the defense.
Yeah, because you're practicing their game. And you're never in 8 weeks or even a year. Unless you're GSP maybe, you know, whatever. You're not going to get better at their game than them. So all you're doing is not practicing your game. Practice your game. Be aware of their game. Find ways to try to defeat their game. Have a better cardio game than them, so that you can do whatever you need to do one more time than they can do. If they take you down 20 times, you get up 21 times. If you take them down 20 times, then they get up 20 times. You take them down the 21st time. Like you should have the cardio and the mindset of that I can always go more than this person. But when fight camp comes, you shouldn't be sitting there focusing on necessarily what this guy does. You need to be aware of what he does. And a lot of times I'll have drills and I'll do stuff without telling the fighter what we're doing, because I don't want him to be aware of, you're doing this so you don't get caught in the armbar. When in reality, it's like, your goal today is that anytime this happens, I want you to do this thing and get back to here. And turns out now, all the new techniques are my old techniques. You know, oh, look at what everyone's doing now. It's like, you know, people don't, you know, used to be, people sparred 3 times a week, and it was twice a week. And we spar once a week, and we don't even spar 100% that once a week. And people be like, you gotta get used to getting hit. Like, if you're fighting and you're not tough, you know, you learn to get tough in your first 2 years. Beat the shit out of each other your first 2 years. After that, if you're not tough, you shouldn't be a fighter. But if you come to your team training and your goal is just to get tough, well, you're at the wrong gym here, because we want tough guys to want to get better, not guys that want to get tougher. You know.
Great fighting philosophy. I like to hear all that. What's on the horizon for you? Anything new coming up? This is a new gym here, so 2 months now.
Yeah, we're just going into. We're about 2.5 months. Okay. August 15th is when we technically opened, but we didn't do a grand opening until Labor Day. Okay. So we've been open basically since September. We're through the first half of November now. So we're 2.5 months, and yeah, and it's Fight Science. It's dead center, mid city LA. So it's a cool location, and you know, I've been at other gyms with this fight team for a long time, and I just finally decided this is my neighborhood. I saw it, and I said, I'm gonna just bring the fight team here. We opened this up as a place for the fight team, but as everyone knows, fight teams don't generally make, unless you're huge, they don't make enough money to cover it. So
you do, yeah.
So we have regular classes for, you know, kickboxing, striking, jiu-jitsu for regular people, non-fighters.
What's the class schedule?
So we're here every night we have kids classes from 5 to 6. Every night from 6 to 8:30, 9 o'clock. We alternate striking, grappling every night.